She boarded the ship as a man, but disembarked as a woman. By the time her secret unraveled, she was married, twice. One of her husbands was 80 years old. The other would be the one to turn her in. This is not a legend. This really happened. This is the forgotten story of Lumke Thoole. Our tale begins in the early 18th century, in the small northern town of Norden, in what was then known as East Frisia, now part of modern Germany. Windswept and quiet, Norden was a place where life followed a predictable rhythm. Church bells ringing on Sundays, fishermen returning at dusk, and children playing in the muddy streets. It was the kind of town where everyone knew each other's name. And yet within that small, structured world, there lived a young woman who would defy all of it. Her name was Lumke Thoole. At some point before 1720, Lumke married Thijs Geerts, a German sailor in the nearby town of Emden, just 20 kilometers to the south. We don't know how they met. Perhaps he was charming, or perhaps he offered a promise of escape, an anchor or a lifeline, depending on how one sees it. Did they love each other? Did they argue behind closed doors? Were there plans or just silence? We may never know. What we do know is that Lumke disappeared. No letters, no goodbyes, just gone. When she next appears in historical records, she's no longer Lumke Thoole. She's in Amsterdam, alone, dressed in men's clothes, and answering to the name Jan Thunis. It was a daring transformation, but not a random one. To be a man in 18th century Europe meant freedom, access, safety even. Lumke, now Jan, found work as a servant, in taverns, in houses. Eventually, she went even further. She signed up for work as a sailor aboard a ship bound for the Dutch colonies, a vessel called the Berbices, set to depart for Batavia, present-day Jakarta. The date was July 12, 1723. It's hard to imagine what it must have been like for her. Living among the crew, sharing quarters, hauling ropes, bracing storms, all while hiding in plain sight. One slip, one misstep, and she'd be exposed. But for a time, she managed. Days turned to weeks, weeks into months. And then somewhere on the vast open sea, the secret unraveled. Maybe someone noticed the way she bound her chest, or how she avoided bathing with the others. Maybe it was a whispered suspicion that grew into confrontation. However it happened, Lumke's truth was revealed. She was not Jan Thunis, not by birth. She was a woman disguised as a man aboard a ship of the Dutch East India Company, an offense in the eyes of the law and a scandal among sailors. Yet, despite the revelation, she wasn't immediately punished. When the Berbices docked in Cape Town on November 19, 1723, the records show that she was simply dismissed. Dismissed, not flogged, not imprisoned, not sent back. Just dismissed. It was a strange mercy, perhaps shaped by pragmatism, or perhaps by a silent admiration for her boldness. She stayed at the Cape, under a new name again, this time as Johanna Thunis Switters. Once more, she rebuilt herself. She found shelter, community, and astonishingly, love, or at least companionship. She married again. Her new husband was Abraham Hartog, a man of 80, originally from Frankfurt am Main, and once a convert to the Reformed Church at the Cape. What could have drawn her to him? Was it stability she wanted? A roof? A name to anchor her once more? Or had she simply grown weary of the loneliness? On January 21, 1725, Their daughter, Maria Magdalena, was baptized. Lumke, now Johanna, was a wife and a mother. The danger seemed to have passed. A life of storms replaced by domestic calm. But history, like fate, does not easily release its grip. One afternoon, perhaps while walking the cobbled streets of Cape Town, she heard a voice she recognized. Thijs Geerts, her first husband. He had found her, or perhaps he had never stopped searching. What was said between them is lost to time, but the consequences are written clearly in the records that followed. She was arrested, not for desertion, not for false identity, but for bigamy. She had married twice, without a divorce, without legal separation, and now it was her past that condemned her. The trial was swift. Her sentence was harsh. Public humiliation, a fine of 100 Rijksdaalders, banishment from the Cape back to Europe. And finally, the court added the second offense, that she had lived and worked as a man, deceiving those around her. It was as though her greatest strength, her ability to navigate and survive, had become her final crime. We don't know what happened after that. There are no more official entries, no ship manifests bearing her name, no further baptisms, no recorded death, nothing. Did she truly return to Europe? Or did she vanish into the colony under yet another name? Was she broken or defiant to the end? Perhaps she lived in silence. Perhaps she told her daughter stories of oceans and sails and courage and loss. Or perhaps Maria Magdalena never knew the truth at all. What we do know is this: Lumke Thoole crossed boundaries of gender, of law, of expectation. She risked everything not once, but again and again. In a world that offered her no space, she carved one out by force of will. She was a woman. She was a sailor. She was a mother. She was a fugitive. She was, in every sense, extraordinary. And yet, history nearly forgot her. She left behind only fragments, legal records, a baptism, a marriage certificate, a trial. Her story stitched together not through pages of journals or letters, but through consequences. And in those pieces, we glimpse someone ahead of her time. Someone who chose motion over stillness, change over safety, disguise over surrender. She reminds us that history is not only made by those with power, titles, and monuments, but also by those who fight silently, who survive by disappearing, who resist by simply refusing to be what the world demands. She reminds us that freedom is often paid for in solitude. That identity can be both armor and burden. That names, Lumke Thoole, Jan Theonies, Johanna Switters, can be masks, but also declarations. She reminds us of the stories we don't tell, of the women we don't name, of the lives that vanish between the pages. But not this time. This time, we remember.